Thanks, Emily. Appreciate everybody's attendance today. As Emily mentioned, we are going to step through 4 specific ways to help you with your email security and compliance environment. And we're really going to break this down into 2 sections. The first we'll go over the 4 specific recommendations, and then we'll address how Vercher can help with many of those in your environment. So stepping back a second, the entire environment that we are dealing with now from a security system is drastically changing as we adopt cloud systems. So we not only have different devices and different environments, but they're no longer inside of the perimeters that we are used to protecting. So what this means is controlling access to your most sensitive data becomes very difficult in your cloud environments, in systems and data centers that you no longer have control for. For those that have specifically regulatory compliance, such as HIPAA, CGIS, or upcoming ITAR regulations for export of data, this becomes critical in the factor of how you protect this data and still be compliant to your regulatory bodies. And as we'll discuss further in this presentation, the concepts of data breaches that we're seeing daily now in the news, especially around all of this election data, becomes critical in this. But the thing that isn't changing in this environment is email is still the preferred communication mechanism for us as organizations. So we are still trying to send and still need to protect that most sensitive data in that environment. So the 4 areas that we're going to cover today regarding securing this environment revolve around, number 1, the use of encryption and encryption options from a technology standpoint. Talk about concepts of access control above and beyond encryption, ensuring that the right people have access to the content you share and are protecting. How to take the human element into this, the education process of your employees and the people you're communicating with, and talk about technology that can help from a data loss prevention standpoint. So the first thing that we're going to cover is indeed that topic of encryption. So many of the data breaches that we've seen today with the various DNC candidates, with former Secretary of State, with other executives, a lot of these things simply can be prevented with the use of encryption. So there are several options for encryption that exist for your email environment. We're going to discuss the 3 top ones today. So the first one is really all about how your admins set up your servers. So there are options from an email standpoint to set up what is known as SSL or TLS-based encryption, whereas that you are guaranteeing that the email servers that your servers are communicating with, the actual pipes, what you're communicating with over, is encrypted. So the content isn't necessarily encrypted inside of those pipes, but access to that encrypted of the pipes are encrypted. So from a user experience standpoint, you don't necessarily know if this is the case. Gmail is, Google is specifically starting to indicate if some messages are coming across encrypted pipes, which are great, but you don't necessarily have control of the individual data objects as they're going across. But a very good option with regards to ensuring that people aren't listening to your email traffic. Another option is portal-based encryption. There are various vendors out there that will allow you to send secure messages outside of your domain, outside of your environment, but rather sending them an encrypted content, they will upload it to an encrypted portal and store it in their environment and then allow people to access that environment, usually by creating a user ID and a password, logging in, authenticating into that environment, and then picking up and using that. So in this case, they're not using their regular email environment like their web browser for Gmail or Office 365 or your Outlook experience. Rather, you're sending an email to a gateway, then that specific information is uploaded there, and we'll go through that. One downside of this approach is the user experience, as this is another user ID and password that you have to remember, so that requires your recipients to go through that process. You can't just respond to regular emails, so there's a downside to that. You'll actually have to go to a separate environment for that and then open up access to those portals. The third area of encryption has been around for quite some time is data-centric encryption. These are approaches where rather than encrypting the pipes or depending on a system to encrypt it, you'll continue to use your regular email system to deliver the messages. But in this case, you protect the specific objects, the emails and the attachments before they sent out. Two most popular approach. One is the one that Vercher will use is symmetric encryption, where you generate encryption keys on the client and then send that encrypted content out. And then another option for this is around PGP or SMIME encryption, where there's a public and a private key involved. But data-centric encryption is a key aspect because this allows the individual user to protect the most sensitive data in your environment, and it's not depending on external systems to protect that data in motion or protect any of the objects as they exist on the servers themselves. The key aspect of this is that third parties don't have access to the content. It would be only the senders and the recipients from a domain standpoint would have access. So you're granting specific access to who can receive this encrypted content. And most importantly, from a regulatory standpoint, since third parties can't access this, it will meet many of your regulatory needs around the export and sending of encrypted content from here. We're going to cover data-centric encryption a little bit further when we actually show how Vercher works, but there are very good options for data encryption, both with the plus and downsides within that. So from an encryption standpoint, there's sound technology, but you have to be sure that individuals don't have access to your specific systems as well. So the key point to protecting your email environment is all around access control. And really what we have found and from research, the easiest and most straightforward way to ensure that only identified parties have access to your network is by enabling a concept called two-factor authentication. Most all mature software vendors and email providers will all provide this capability. What this is above and beyond your user ID and your email, there is a second process that needs to go through for that time for an authentication to happen. So this is a second level anytime someone will access a system for the first time. So for instance, if I were to log into my Gmail account with two-factor authentication on from a new browser session, I'll provide my user ID and password. And then since I have never logged into this device before, I will have to enter in a second step. In this case, I will use the Google Authenticator app to generate or authenticate with a passcode that's generated from that. Other factors that are commonly used are SMS text messages. So you register your phone number. Every time you log into your Apple ID, for instance, you'll get an SMS that you have to enter in approving that access. So for instance, if your password is compromised in some way, there is always a second factor to configure or approve that process there. So two-step verification, as Google knows it, or two-factor authentication can be enabled for your entire organization and something that we definitely recommend from a security standpoint. But you have to be conscious of it from an admin standpoint. There are some systems that simply won't authenticate with that second factor. And so there are provisions that need to be made for that. In those cases, there are application passwords that may be generated within access to that, or an API token that may be used as well. But those are typically edge cases within that environment, but definitely something to consider. Also, if you're using a third-party authentication provider that uses OAuth or SAML, there are other factors involved, such as RSA tokens or YubiKeys or specific apps. For instance, Okta is a great authentication provider. They will have specific apps that are generated for that. But simply two-factor authentication is a great way in any phishing attempt, if a password does get out in those, to handle that. Another aspect of access control is actually pretty simple but can get individuals a lot, is when you're sending content or email, is beware of the autofill capabilities. You know, really simple and kind of jokingly that, but I think everybody has been affected by that, is when you're typing an email address, for instance, in this case we have all@company.xyz.com and accidentally sent that out, making sure you either disable that or handle that. And then if you have technology or possibilities around that, tracking, controlling emails before they're sent is an option as well. So in this case, this was an email that had been sent by Vercher. We can indicate which parties have access to that, and you can actually authorize or revoke access to specific users on a chain. So access control and encryption, two key aspects to this within your environments, both really system-wide aspects, but when it really comes down to it, the most important aspect of security are the individual people in your organization. So an interesting study that came out earlier this year from the UK Information Commissioner's Office indicated that based off of the various data breach incidences that they had gathered over the period of time of this study, that 62% of those were attributed to some type of human error. Okay, so human error, 17% was data posted or faxed to the wrong recipient. So in that case, the simple example of an autofill or mistyping an email address would be one of those, would be considered a data breach. In the US, that would be potentially a HIPAA violation that contained patient data. Another 17% was all around the loss of a device or paperwork that had not been encrypted around that. And then another 9% all around, again, that email of a wrong recipient. So more interestingly, I think as part of this, this is obviously a very high percentage, but only 9% of the data breach incidences that were found were actually due to specific instances of hacking or insecure web pages that people are listening traffic on. So really the human element in education is a big portion of the policies and procedures that you need to use to protect your email environment. And one of the biggest things that we worry about, and that when I talk to security officers on a weekly basis, is all around the concept of phishing, specific attacks on your network or individuals within your environment. So from that, in this case, there are several techniques, both from an education standpoint as well as from a technology standpoint, that can assist you with any phishing exercise. So the first is a team training exercise and workshops. We go through those on a yearly basis here at Vercher as part of our HIPAA regulations and our requirements around that. Workshops and training are definitely something around there. There are actually organizations that will go through mock exercises that will try to do that. A local DC startup right down the street from us here at Vercher is known as PhishMe, will provide a great service around that too as part of a training effort. One aspect from a system administration standpoint, if you do have access or you are a mail administrator, is make sure that you will engage all of the techniques to your ability to prevent email spoofing. So in this case, where someone will change the email headers to indicate that the email is coming maybe from your executive team or through that process there. So there's three specific technologies that you can enable for your specific domain. One is known as SPF, or Sender Policy Framework. The Sender Policy Framework allows you to indicate the list of IP addresses that you send emails from. So if they're coming from IP addresses or servers that aren't yours, mail providers can see that and identify that as a potentially spoofed email. Another one is DKIM. So this is domain keys identified mail. So this is technology that allows you to sign email messages to indicate that they've been signed with your keys. And then the final one is known as DMARC, or domain-based message authentication and reporting and compliance. So if you do have, allows you to monitor, protect, and identify any fraudulent emails that other people or other organizations have found. So all three of those are ways and technologies and techniques that mail providers are using to prevent spoofing in your environment. From a policies and procedure standpoint, reviewing your password policies are a critical aspect of that. There's actually been some recent research published that seems a little counterintuitive at first. As IT administrators, we've been trained to identify or recognize that passwords should be changed every 30 to 60 days or 60 to 90 days based off of that. But recent study, there's a great article write-up about this in Wired magazine in March, where the FTC Chief Technology Officer, technologist Lori Cranor from Carnegie Mellon, basically did research and said how effective is changing passwords from a 60 to 90 day requirement and actually protecting your networks, and actually found it was less protection because people actually will use less secure passwords that only change a single digit around that. So reviewing the current research and process within going with is definitely something to review. Also considering encouraging using of passphrases instead of passwords, where you use a random set of words rather than a letter-number combination within those. Long passphrases are definitely something that will help your individual employees choose better passwords around that and prevent the reuse of passwords within your environment. Okay. So others are pretty straightforward. There are web filter technologies that I'm sure most of you are using and handling that, but encryption also is a key aspect of this. If you happen to have a penetration into your network, and encrypting your most sensitive information will allow you to protect that content and go through that. And from an endpoint requiring encryption for your remote employees that may be in remote networks, maybe VPN tunnels are always helpful for that. So as an example of a phishing attack and where those items will come into play from a sender verification and validation, in this case we can see this is an email that is spoofing from an Apple ID, indicating here, and these are the common things. We've all seen them, we continue to see them, but they're usually some sort of alarming detail or situation that's trying to make a call for action, usually links as they're going through that. So going through specific instances in your organization of exact phishing emails that you have seen come in. Impersonated emails from executive teams are another common one that we will discuss with the various executives. All of those are things to look out for and spot and encourage within your environment. So the final aspect of the email security is implementing some sort of data loss prevention technology. So there are technologies out there that allow you to understand your emails within transit and make sure that you're not leaking any of that information from your environment. And the concept's pretty simple when it comes down to it, is the data loss prevention technology allows you to search for your most sensitive information and will allow you to choose to take action on that. In many instances, that can happen on your back-end servers. There are specific DLP vendors that will allow you to scan your email through gateways. Google Apps Unlimited customers will have this capability built into their Google Apps as well within that, and will allow you to choose how to handle information here. In this case, we have an example of client-side DLP that will actually show from a demonstration standpoint where you can also do scanning with Vercher, before emails are sent out. In this case, we have a pretty simple example. You don't want to email social security numbers out unencrypted. You want to protect your most sensitive customer information. So the DLP will identify those patterns and automatically be used to encrypt content before it goes out. But this is also a technique for user education. So your policies and procedures will indicate what are the things you need to encrypt or not send out. By enforcing data loss prevention in the client, you can help users make the right decisions and recommend processes based off of what we have. So all of these 4 key points are keys to helping you secure your email environment. There are techniques you can use that are nothing to do with technology such as education, but there is a great way to help with all of these areas, and that is where Vercher focuses our email security and privacy products on. And the key to Vercher are 3 key points that we want to we focus on as a company. So number 1, we focus on allowing your users, or you personally, an easy-to-use environment that doesn't deal with the onerous process of managing encryption keys and who you can send to and how there. We want you to encrypt your most sensitive data as quickly and easily as possible so that you don't have to make specific hard decisions whether you do that or not. But we don't want to sacrifice security within this environment. And then finally, as a byproduct of this is your most sensitive data, so we will give you a level of control on that data that is above and beyond just the security of that content, allowing things like revocation or disabling forwarding of those environments. Really the best way to understand Vercher, rather than me stepping you through any more slides, is to step through a demonstration of the product in action. So that's what we'll do now. So we'll send a few secure emails and describe, number 1, how it fits into your client environment, how recipients receive data, receive these encrypted emails, and then how you as a sender or administrator have the various control features from a technology standpoint. Okay? So I'll also pause here. Feel free to type any questions in the questions panel. We will open those up, and Emily will be asking those at the end of the session. So if there's any questions that come up from a presentation standpoint, we're happy to provide answers for those. And if any questions come up during the demonstration, please type those within the panel there. Okay. So from a Vercher standpoint, we want to make encryption as easy to use as possible. Okay. So in this environment we want you to send encrypted emails from anywhere that you are used to sending emails. So in this case, we're going to start from the Google Apps experience. So if you're on the G Suite product set, you're using your web browser for sending and receiving emails and going through that. And Vercher in this case is provided as an extension to your browser that we have. So if I want to make the decision to use Vercher in this environment, I simply turn the switch on, and at this point, all of your content is protected. Okay? So if I'm going to go send an email to another individual at my company, I'm working at Vercher Privacy here. I can also send email to someone who's not in my company, someone outside of my domain, as I have within that. And this is where I can share any of the data, whether it's sensitive, whether it's private, that we have. In this case, I may want to share some specific data that I would definitely want encrypted. So this would be some patient data as related to that. Any type of attachment may come into play as well. So I can choose to specifically have an attachment such as a PDF file that we have. Okay. So all of those environments is just like any other email. The biggest difference is I turn Vercher encryption on, and now when I send this email, it will encrypt both the attachment and the content and send that off. During this process, encryption keys were generated, used to encrypt the content directly on the machines that we have, and they were sent and handled directly within that environment. So in this case, I also have that I'm a secure user. So IMA happens to be a regular Outlook user in this environment. So I just opened up that email that just popped up right there. And again, this looks like any other email, but the big difference here is Vercher encryption is on and I have the Vercher plugin installed. So I will decrypt directly within this environment, as well as have access to decrypt any of the attachments and open those up directly. In this case, my default PDF viewer would be Edge here within that. So it's just like any other email when you have Vercher installed within that environment. The biggest difference with this encryption technology is you also have the ability to send emails to people that don't have Vercher installed. So in this case, I sent to this new to Vercher user that happens to be on Gmail as well. And what they will receive is they will receive an email message that is an introduction message that's customizable by you as the sender or as an organization. We're using a default Vercher template, but this can all be handled within here. But the key aspect to all of this is you need to be able to make sure that the individual knows that they're receiving this. So the phishing education and process here has taught us to be leery of links and processes that we have, so education becomes a critical aspect. But what we understand here is if I go show you this original message, this is indeed encrypted ciphertext. So I see a bunch of tokens, I see a bunch of ciphertext. The message can't be decrypted directly by any intervening party or process there. It can only be decrypted by the sender and the recipients of the data. So when a user hasn't seen or installed Vercher, we will authenticate them the first time so we know that they are, who they say they are. So we'll go through that process. In this case, I'm the new to Vercher user. And then I can use an authentication provider. So if I had a OAuth or SAML provider like Google is providing us here, I could use that. And then I can use two-factor authentication to authenticate those as well. Since I'm already logged into this session, they already know who I am. And once I've gone through that process, I can now decrypt this message directly within the web session that I am currently in. So this is really important to note here is Vercher nor Google ever saw the unencrypted content. In this case, all of this email that we've decrypted and processed within this environment has only been processed within this web browser session. So if this were a mobile phone, if this were a Firefox browser, an Internet Explorer, all of that decryption actually happens with that environment there. Okay. So as a sender, I've shown, hey, it's easy to send messages. Number one, it's secure within that. The other aspect within all of this environment is you have a level of control on your email environment that you don't have with any other regular emails that you send out. And you can start seeing this by when I go look at the messages that I just sent. So in this case, I sent this message 3 minutes ago. One of the new features we've added is we've added the ability to see, number one, if these messages have been read. So we have a little green envelope next to the names of the individuals. These are read receipts indicating that they have decrypted these messages. We also have the ability as the sender to revoke access. So if I accidentally had autofill and sent that up, I have the ability, number one, know if they've read it, and number two, I can revoke access, which immediately revokes access even if they currently have that message currently opened. Also, as the sender, I have the ability to, upon sending or after the fact, involve concepts like disable forwarding or setting expiration timelines so that that message will auto-destruct effectively or the key or access to that. For those who are familiar with Vercher already but haven't seen it in a while, we also have introduced a concept of content protection through PDF watermarking. When I enable this involved, and I re-enabled the process there. Any recipient of a email, in this case with PDF watermarking on, now will have enhanced PDF protection turned on for that environment. So within that environment, they will no longer be able to download or print directly from the clients or the process or decrypt that. And if they were to, when they open that process, the email address of the recipient is watermarked on the background so that you have a picture. So if someone were to take a picture of the screen or do a print screen of the environment, you at least know that the item and where this information is coming from. So your control and your protection are all coming directly from that environment. So all of this information is accessible to you as an individual user within our dashboard environment as well. So one of the aspects that we talked about was access control within emails. So a byproduct of sending encrypted content and going through these is that emails are protected from your environment. And so as a sender of an email, I can go see in my dashboard all of the emails that I've sent securely. I can see if they've been read or not. So in this case, I have that HIPAA data as well, since it's new to Vercher, and I have identified that that has never been read. But I also have the ability to identify if messages have been forwarded. So I can go look at threads in this case, that where they have been forwarded to, since forwarding was disabled, and I can revoke specific access and understand if access has been made to those environments. And then finally, the concept of DLP is also available to administrators, because again, what we're doing is trying to protect your most sensitive information and potentially educate our users on what are secure policies for a specific environment. So for instance, if I were to go try to send data that does not adhere to our policies for something that we cannot send in plain text, in this case a credit card, we have the ability as administrators to set up specific rules that will prevent these emails from going out unencrypted. So in this case, we're educating the users that was the sensitive information, and we're recommending that they send securely within that process. But as an administrator, you also have the ability in your administrative dashboard to build out custom rules based off this environment. So in this case, we gave the user the choice. We could have chosen to automatically encrypt those messages for those environments. You can key off pre-built patterns that Vercher provides out of the box. You can choose keywords that may occur within an email. If you're sending to a specific partner, agency, or domain, you can choose to have that. If, for instance, if you're having an M&A or you're going through your legal department, those are great examples of how to do that. Or combine any of those concepts into custom rules based off of any aspect or attachment content of the environment, full if then else logic, and trigger multiple actions based off of this. So Vercher, the whole concept is we want to make your email environment as easy to use as possible, sending out your most sensitive data within your environment, and allow you to securely send that and control who has access to what and for how long. All of these will be pre-built or natively built into your email environment, going through that and allow you to control these and control your encryption keys and manage those for yourself. So those are the key aspects of Vercher, and now we will open it up for questions.
Great, thank you, Brett. We've got one here. There was some talk a while back of offering drive encryption. Is this going to happen?
Absolutely. So drive encryption is something that is very interesting for Vercher as a company, because the concept of storing drive files is an area that we want to protect. We want to protect everything above and beyond email. The Vercher technology has been built to protect any file of any type based off of the object of the data. So currently, Vercher is offering a beta version of drive encryption for our trusted testers that will allow them to protect content within Drive and files that they are storing within that, and then share those environments outside of Drive within that. So that is currently something that we are working with our trusted testers in, and stay tuned on when that will be generally available for you as to purchase.
Great, thank you. Another question. Vercher plugin is well integrated with Gmail webmail. How is it integrating with Exchange Server 2013-2016 Outlook Web Access?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we showed one example as a recipient of integrating directly within your Windows Outlook environment. So for your Exchange 2013 and all of your Exchange clients, those end clients will directly integrate within your Outlook environment with our Vercher add-in that will allow you to do all of that same sending functionality as well as decrypting directly from within your Outlook environment. For folks that are moving to Office 365 and will be using the web environment for there, we're currently in development through that process as well. Another stay tuned, we're currently in beta for some of the Office 365 environments, and that same work will translate to Outlook Web Access as well. So as every good Exchange administrator knows, Microsoft changes OWA for every release of Exchange. So based off of adoption and customer demand, there will be various release timelines for Outlook Web Access support. But your base email clients from Outlook all are supported today, and many of our customers are using that exact environment.
Great, thank you. Got another one here. My Outlook email is 2007 version. I haven't been able to use Vercher with it for a while. Is there a way to make this work with Outlook 2007 again?
I'm sorry to say there is no way for us to use Outlook 2007. Once Microsoft dropped support for that environment, we could no longer provide the add-in support as well. So our minimum support for Outlook is 2010 and up.
Okay, thank you. So next question, is it possible for an organization admin to decrypt emails of an employee of an organization, for example, after they've resigned?
Absolutely. So the keys are owned by you as an organization. So the way that Vercher encryption works is that admins of your organization will have the capability to decrypt the content or request keys on behalf of their employees. So the answer is most definitely, and that usually will come in various forms depending on where and how you're trying to access those and what your policies are. With your Outlook environment or your Exchange environment, you have the ability to log in as those users. So that would an admin would be allowed to do that. We also have bulk decryption tools that are available if you need those for your e-discovery requirements. So we are helping customers in various ways with exactly those problems.
Okay. Next question. Does Vercher support encryption for Gmail on Android phones and tablets?
So for Gmail on Android phones or tablets, and I'll just put a comment in there for your iOS users as well. So Vercher in those environments you can receive emails in your Gmail native apps for your Android and iOS. and use the secure reader to decrypt and reply to those messages. But to originate new messages, Vercher provides specific iOS and Android apps to send those secure emails. And the reason for that is that the plugin architecture or extension framework, if you will, that we use within Outlook or we use within your web experience for Gmail, all of those are provided by the systems that we have, and those don't exist for the Gmail and apps within your Android or your iOS environment. So Vercher provides those that can be all deployed via mobile device management, MDM, or just downloaded from the Play Store or the App Store.
Excellent. I am just going to hold a really quick poll. We do have a few more questions we'll get to, but we just had one poll that we wanted to post here. So if everyone can just take a moment and answer this for us, that would be fantastic. All right, I will close it in about 5 seconds. Really appreciate everybody taking the time to fill this out. Okay, let's share the results really quick. It looks like it was definitely relevant, somewhat and very to the majority, so that's great. Thank you. Okay, so we do have a few more questions here. Is there an option to change the PDF watermark to say the company name, or will it just be the email of the sender?
So the email is actually the recipient, because if you're, in this case, we're more interested in where the information is coming from a watermark standpoint. However, currently that is the only option is the sender that is opening the file that we have. However, our engineering team does have a feature request for that specific thing, and going through that, it'll probably be limited to a number of set of characters, since if you have too big of a watermark, your actual documents become unreadable. So that is a request that our engineering team is looking into.
Okay. Is there Active Sync client for iOS, Android mail clients supported?
Yes. So we support Active Sync for Android and iOS, as well as Google Sync if you're using that and have disabled IMAP.
Great. And there's an extension to this question as well, if we support the MS Exchange Active Sync.
We support the Active Sync 12 protocol, which in most instances are what our customers need. The most recent spec, I believe, is Active Sync 14, and so there may be some features that we do not support in that. If there are any of those features, those would be areas that we would look to enhance and upgrade if you're using any of those capabilities.
Great. Just a couple more questions. Is DLP an additional cost to Vercher Pro customers?
DLP is a core functionality for Vercher Pro There is no additional cost for Vercher Pro customers.
Excellent. And then let me just add one more here. Does Vercher support AODocs?
Yes, Vercher does support AODocs. For those who are not familiar with AODocs, AODocs is a document management solution, a great solution built on top of Google Drive that allows you to introduce workflow within your processes, allow you to manage your document space within Google Drive, and Vercher does. That is another client that you can license the use of Vercher to protect your most sensitive information in that environment. I think we're wrapping up on questions here. One point that we didn't highlight here, and one reason that we have this link to the closer look, is we've recently made some great announcements on Vercher's support for encrypted search, which will allow you to protect your most sensitive information, not expose that to Google or Vercher, but still search functionality within your Google or your Outlook environments by searching into messages and finding your encrypted content, as well as we now have support for Google Vault, which surprised we didn't get a question for that, because that usually comes up every webinar, is if you're using Google Vault for e-discovery purposes, we now have an interface available to decrypt messages and search directly into there and decrypt content as your Vault administrators for your e-discovery needs. So if you have interest in talking about any of those things, we'd love to talk to you about them. Emily's provided a link that we're showing here in our presentation.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Brett. And as we mentioned, we will be reaching out to you hopefully tomorrow morning with the recording from today's webinar. And we'll also be following up if any of you had questions we didn't have a chance to get to. So thank you so much for your time and attention and all of your fantastic questions, and we hope you have a great rest of the week. Thank you so much.